Welcome to Design to Move, a weekly functional movement series reviewing common movement impairment syndromes, muscle imbalances, and injury cycles and how to correct for them. Don't just exercise, but restore optimal movement.
Everybody, welcome back to another episode of Design to Move. This is Ryan Maxwell and Ryan Parker. We're two movement specialists here at Fluid Health and Fitness. Today we're going to talk about a movement dysfunction called excess pronation syndrome. This has to do with the feet and their inability to stay straight, essentially, right? So a lot of us have issues with the foot where it will roll out or abduct away from the middle of the body. And that looks like the foot is flattening and rotating out. And that has to do with weakened musculature of the foot that helps to support the mechanical structure of the foot. And then if that's not stable, the foot will dump in and create excess medial torsion or rotation into your lower appendages. And that wreaks havoc on the knee, on the hip, eventually into the back, and all the other issues that you hear about when we go over these movement dysfunctions every week. So today we're going to show you how to address this issue, what to look for if you do have it in your own posture and movement quality. If you have questions on any of the information, you can reach out to us at admin@fluidhealthandfitness.com. We do write a blog on the series. It's in the description below. Make sure to click on the link and go take a gander. And we have a table of contents to the side. You can see that here. And we break it down by segment with a condensed version at the very end. On that note, let's giddy up and we'll get started. First segment is mobility and release. I want to show you how to release the plantarflexors of the ankle and the groin muscles, the adductors of the femurs. So the first set of muscles that we're going to release are the plantarflexors of the ankle. So Ryan, show them your delicate feet here. You've got long, delicate feet. So the plantarflexors are the muscles that pull the toes down towards the floor. They help with propulsion when you're walking, right? A lot of times they're tight. And so what happens is the plantarflexors that push the toes down, they also evert the foot out, which means it rotates from inside out. So medial to lateral out, okay? So a lot of times when these guys are tight, especially your peroneals or your lateral gastrocs or soleus, these are all, again, plantarflexor muscles. They have a tendency to rotate the toe out. And that's going to change what we call your progression angle, your foot progression angle. Now, the ankle should be pretty level when you step on it. So when you hit the ground and then you roll into, again, mid stance, this would be mid stance. You want the heel bone, this guy right here, called the calcaneus, to be in line with your second toe or second metatarsal. So if it goes out of that line and you start to kick out, that creates a lot of torsion at the ankle where it will roll in against that and start to carry the whole leg in with it. Okay, now that's important, as what we're going to talk about today is reducing the pressure gradient of the muscles that facilitate that initial action, and then how that systemically leads up to tighter compressed groin muscles that are, again, being rotated into compression and they become tight too. So that then changes the whole symmetry of what's called the anterior line or oblique line. And then by extension, the back musculature too, that helps to keep us upright and maintain our posture, okay? So once again, remember, foot angle needs to be neutral, heel over the second toe. We wanna look for that as we're moving up. You see that as a distortion in your own movement patterns, this one's for you, okay? So today what we're gonna do is use a little lacrosse ball to help to reduce the pressure points and excess tension and these gastrocs, peroneals, insoles. And we're gonna get on the table to do that. So Ryan's gonna kick the leg over. And he's gonna pull the ball just above the Achilles, this little tendon that attaches the soleus and gastroc to the heel bone, the calcaneus. He's gonna come up just a little bit. Now, we like to stay on the lateral side. If you run the ridge of the fibula, that outer bone of the lower extremity, you'll find the peroneals in there. And you're just gonna put pressure down. Now what you can do is use your opposite leg to add additional pressure. Goal being here that we don't put so much pressure that the muscle guards. So what does that look like? Guarding is a reflex action where the body wants to tense up and it's not gonna let the tissues relax or release. We're trying to get the muscles to relax so they can elongate and we can start pulling their tissues open, including the fascial tissue that wraps all of those muscle fibers. Okay, so we sit on that for a little bit of time until the muscle starts to relax. Ryan's gonna keep a nice upright posture so he's gonna support his spine. And as he breathes in, he's gonna pull his toe up, pull the toe internally, and then breathe out, and then apply more pressure. So this is a pin and stretch technique. This is a soft tissue mobilization drill. We do it a lot in our videos. We do it in pretty much every video, right? But what it does is it helps to relax the central nervous system so that the chronic tone of those muscles that have been told by your brain to be tight all the time, it's going to send a signal to let it relax or tell it to chill out and let it go a little bit. So we want to go through multiple sequences of this. As you breathe in, toes can come up. See if you can pull it up even higher, because the end goal here is to get more functional range of motion. The opposite of plantarflexion is dorsiflexion. You're going to extend the foot up and rotate it internally so that the foot doesn't want to flip out and externally rotate. Okay? So you go through about 6 to 10 iterations of that. And you could go through multiple spots. Again, you have your peroneals along the fibula, you could go along that side, you could go deeper into the belly of the muscle up here in the gastroc, or you could stay lower, closer to the Achilles and get into the soleus and go through those same techniques, right? But the end goal, again, to see more dorsiflexion and a little bit more inversion so we can keep that foot progression angle under control. Okay, so get through that, do both sides of the body, and then we're gonna go up the chain into the adductors. So the adductors are basically the groin muscles or the loin muscles. These are the muscles that either internally rotate the leg on flexion or internally rotate the leg, the femur, on extension. Today we're really not going to distinguish that because there are different fiber lengths, but generally speaking, the groin becomes tight if the knee rotates inward because of the issues with the excess pronation of the feet. So in order to reduce those, we're going to show you how to get in on the front side of those fibers, and Ryan's going to get down on this bench. Now he's using our 5-inch foam core ball. This is our fluid ball. You can purchase one through our website, check it out. But either way, he's going to put his weight on the ball so that it's midway up the femur. So the ball should be just up into his groin, so not so close to the kneecap. There you go, Ryan. And you'll notice that he has his leg out to the side of his body and back behind him. It's going to start stretching through these short fibers of his groin, and he's got his weight positioned on both of his palms so that his shoulders are right over his palms or his hands, and he's going to extend his right arm, or rather his left arm, out a little bit more. So he's putting more weight into his left palm than his right. It's going to set him up for, again, an internally rotated position through the thorax on that side. So his balance is nice and stable from his shoulders down to his pelvis. And you feel the pressure in your groin, Ryan?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So we're gonna sit there. If the weight of your leg is so great that it puts too much pressure and again you get that pain and guard reflex, then again this is something that you're gonna wanna adjust. Maybe adjust the height. Maybe don't wanna use a bench. You could use like a stack of books and put the ball on the stack of books. I found a bunch of different ways to do that. Or maybe the pressure's too great because you're using that ball and the surface area is too small, so you got too much pounds per square inch. So you could switch out to a foam roller. Just a lot of different ways to get into this. But either way, just know this is how we're gonna get into the muscle itself. Now, to do that pin and stretch technique like we just did on your calves, you're gonna breathe in, externally rotate your hip back, so his foot is rotating towards the ceiling, and then breathe out and rotate it back in and create more pressure into the ball as you sink your leg down onto it. Now again, the process of the stretch and the release should help to relax the muscle so you get an increase in passive tone in the muscle fibers, and it'll give him a chance to get that ball deeper into the belly of the muscle and start to elongate and stretch those fibers open. So he's gonna go through that about 6 to 10 times, and then he's gonna switch over to the opposite side. Remember, this is a derivative of the lack of stability in the foot, which leads to compressive forces and shortening of these muscles. Because they attach the leg to the pelvis, they do move the pelvis around, and that again is going to systemically lead up into that chain. So make sure to take some time on this, 60 seconds to 90 seconds on either side, and then we'll move into our next segment. This segment is called activation. Here's where we're going to target the specific little muscles that help to stabilize the body and offset the additional pressure of the overactive muscles. These are normally considered phasic or discontinuous. And today we're going to target the abductor hallucis muscle of the foot. It helps to maintain the arch of the foot. Let's get going. Structurally, the mechanics of the foot with the bones, the tarsals, they are meant to help to support and actually create a natural arch of the foot. But they're also supported by two different other structures, your fascia of your foot, the aponeurosa, which we'll call, plantar fascia, right? But also there are muscles of the foot too that pull the toes up So it goes like this, or pull them back, and it creates a transverse and medial arch. And one of the big muscles that's responsible for that is called the abductor hallucis. Now, a lot of people with flatter feet, they don't have that, and it's customary to see their feet, again, fan out and have excess pronation. So what we want to do is use a rubber band, like you see here on the floor, to pull the toes back towards the heel to encourage the muscles to get stronger that create that arch. Now, if you'll notice on my foot, if I do that, you can see the inside of my ankle. If I pull it up, the ankle will start to rotate externally, and it will actually pull the tarsals inward and adduct them. So that actually creates that arch, and it allows the knee to track evenly. Now, if I do that, it'll offset that additional foot position so that we keep the foot tracking neutrally, like we talked, the foot placement, right? We don't want it to displace. We want the heel to be right in line with the second toe. So Ryan's gonna use this band as an additional tension, and he's trying to grab it with his toes and scoop it up towards his heel. And as he does that, you can also notice that the femur will actually start to externally rotate a little bit. And that's important in hip and gait mechanics. When you come through, as the arch of the foot creates a supination, engaging the lateral rotators and allowing you more thrust through your hip extension. So a lot of times if we don't have that, we're not fully engaging our gluteals either. So pretty important, because why? These gluteals oppose what? The adductors that we just reduced, right? So again, the knee bone's connected to the hip bone, and that's all these guys play together. So again, we're gonna do a nice slow pull up, grip it, weight still in the heel on the lead leg, and he's on his right side, and then he's letting it slowly come down and letting it go. And if you do it right, it's gonna start to burn a bit, right? And we would want about 2 sets of 20 repetitions. So give yourself a minute in between. We want to do both sides of the feet. Most of the time, both are weak, and then we would move into our next exercise. This segment's called integration. This is how we take the freshly activated muscle groups and then tie it into your body's nervous system by showing you how to move efficiently through your joint coupling relationships and muscle coupling relationships. Today we're going to target the lower foot, maintaining the doming with the hip stability. You're going to need an exercise band for this, and this is going to be a distracted ankle single leg balance. Let's get going. So you can see that Ryan is set up with an exercise band anchored to the wall, and he has it braced around his left leg. What that's going to do is create some lateral tension or force pulling his ankle inward. So what this is really doing is magnifying the pronation of the foot by really dumping that ankle in and offsetting the talus neutral position. And what that really means is the ankle, as defined by these 2 little bones here on the side of the ankle, we call the malleoli. They should be at a neutral positioning so that they're about parallel to the floor. So what we don't want is excessive internal rotation of the malleoli dumping inward. When that goes in, that means the foot's going to flatten out and extend away from the body. And that's going to be showing up as, again, pronation, right? So the goal here is to make sure that these little ankle bones stay parallel to each other and that you don't see too much internal rotation. Now to do that, we're gonna, again, call upon the exercise that we just did, that short foot, and it's gonna pull the toes in towards the heel a little bit. And that's gonna help to maintain that nice neutral angle of the foot so that that subtalar angle is neutral, again, parallel. So what we're gonna do now is use that tension from the band to try to hold that fixed position at the foot and ankle, and then go through single leg balance positions. Now what I'm gonna do is make it a little more challenging for Ryan by adding some additional pressure into his pelvis by pulling again from medial to lateral, so that his left hip wants to varus out towards me, so it'll go out like that. And what this is gonna do is force him to use his glute medius to pull his hip up into a neutral alignment while co-contracting the foot musculature. So all said and done, this is gonna help us to integrate the muscles that help to stabilize the pelvis during the mid stance of gait. Pretty important stuff if you like to walk around without pain in the knee, lower back, or pelvis, okay? So if you have a friend, or if you could anchor it somewhere towards, again, maybe like a doorknob offside or offset to one side, then use another band, crossing the body over to maybe like say a couch. So he's gonna dome that foot. He's gonna start in a nice little split stance position. His hip is in a partial flexion with his knees in a partial flexion. Then he's gonna breathe in. He's gonna extend through the knee, keep his foot nice and straight, dome that foot, lift his opposite leg up in the air, and then he's gonna breathe out. He's gonna extend through the knee, keep his foot nice and straight, dome that foot, lift his opposite leg up in the air, Try to keep his pelvic line parallel to the ground. And then he's gonna slowly come down, breathing in. So he's breathing in. He's gonna slowly let his weight come back. Put weight back into that back foot, only as a kickstand, and then breathe out. Straighten the knee, lift the leg up and in front of him. Now, you'll notice that Ryan's head is right over his rib cage. He's not letting his head drop forward. Notice that he's keeping his shoulders tucked back, so he's holding his center of mass right over his vertical line. And again, we're applying that additional pressure from my band, pulling him laterally, and the band at the ankle, pulling his ankle immediately to offset the imbalances that we normally see with excess pronation. Okay, good job, Ryan. So, a couple things. We don't want to see what? The hip varus out. That's an indicator of, again, lack of stability at the pelvis. Again, a reflection of the lack of stability at the foot. We don't want the ankle to dunk in or start to see the foot rotate outward. Remember, you want the heel bone to be right in line with your second toe or the second metatarsal. You want to make sure that the knee doesn't valgus inward or drive in towards the middle of the body, because again, that's a good reflection again of the poor posture or movement quality that we would see from that excess pronation syndrome. So make sure to again go through about 2 sets of 20 repetitions. You'll probably find that it's pretty hard to keep up for that 2 minutes without starting to compensate. So if you do, make sure to reduce the volume and start adding on more volume over the course of multiple sequences of this, meaning multiple sessions, because you're going to want to do this 2 or 3 times a week to really offset that imbalance. And then as you get better with it, you can start adding on additional pressure like this band, or scooching away from the wall a little bit so that there's additional pressure at the foot. Again, if you're prone to plantar fasciitis, make sure to be careful of this with the additional band. Make sure to contraindicate it without the band first and see if your foot can tolerate it, and then we can start adding that additional load. That wraps us up for integration. Let's get started with the next segment. Last segment is strength. And here's where we overload your muscles that are responsible for maintaining global stability and posture. Today we're going to go into the medial hamstrings. We're going to focus on the foot musculature that dorsiflex and extends the foot, and again, the hip extensor muscles, all responsible for maintaining nice neutral lines as you're walking, and that'll overload the body and get it nice and strong and stiff. Let's get going. This is going to be a single leg elevated hip extension. Now, before we get into this, just make sure that you understand that this is not for the faint of heart. This takes a lot of strength around your pelvis and the ability to stabilize a knee in a fully extended position. So caveat for all of those people watching this, if you can't do this position without seeing your hip start to tilt down or up excessively, then you're probably not going to have enough strength to support this movement efficiently without, again, creating more compensations and potentially injury cycles. So do not do this unless you can keep your hips basically parallel to the floor through the entire motion. Okay, and we'll make sure to make note of that as we go through this so that you can see it in yourself. And then again, reduce the intensity if need be by bending the knee or putting both legs on the bench. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, we're gonna make sure that we understand what we're trying to do here. So the setup is the heel is on the bench here. It's about, 18 inches off the ground. And what we're trying to do with Ryan is get him to lift his hip up off the ground by only engaging his gluteals. Now again, there's going to be some byproduct in the hamstrings and the calves, but our goal here is to try to initiate the hip extension by clenching his glute and lifting his hip off the ground. So Ryan, go ahead and do that with both legs to show him what it looks like. Now as he does that, most of us like to do this. Whoop. Which again is a direct reflection of what we were just talking about with the excess pronation of the foot, right? It leads to the orientation of the ankle going out and the foot going with it. So what we're gonna try to do is make sure that we keep that progression angle from the heel to the second tarsal or second toe as we push our body weight up off the ground, clenching through our glutes and lifting up. Now when we lift up, there's a couple things you're gonna wanna start off with. First, make sure that your core is stable by engaging intra-abdominal and intrathoracic pressure. Both are fancy ways of saying I'm going to flex my abs to support my lumbar. You can breathe out to do that. When the tension is around the midsection, then you can breathe in, fill up the thoracic, which is going to give you intrathoracic pressure. Your rib cage is going to expand. And then with that pressure, you're going to lift up. So the hips would come up off the ground, the spine is nice and stable, and then you're gonna breathe out and slowly come down trying to let your glutes stretch to let your hips come down without your feet going anywhere. Now, if you notice, if he pulls his feet up, it's gonna keep his foot almost in the supine position, okay? So it's gonna already naturally create that arch that we were just talking about. If he pulls his toes up, it creates a windlass mechanism at the foot and it increases the arch, and then he's gonna lift up through his hips. Now again, if you can all do that, we're gonna do it with just one leg now. So he's gonna keep his foot, again, inside his hip line. This other leg's gonna come up into flexion, so he's gonna bend the knee, bring his hip up. He's gonna support his torso by pushing down in the opposite hemisphere with that arm, and then he's gonna push through that heel again into the ground or into the bench, clenching the glute and lifting the body up off the ground. So intra-abdominal pressure, abs, intrathoracic pressure, thoracic, and then he's gonna push through the heel, lift up, and I can look at his hip line and it's nice and stable, parallel to the ground, and then he's gonna slowly come down to a count of 4, letting his hip come back down to the ground. Let's do one more set, or one more rep. Again, intra-abdominal pressure, abs, intrathoracic, ribs, push through the heel, lift the hip up. You're putting pressure down on the right palm and coming down together. So there's a contralateral reciprocation between the pressure of the lat when you push your right arm down, following that with pressure from the hip on the left side, creates a nice little sling across the body from the right shoulder to the left hip, and it allows him to get into his medial hamstrings back here. It allows him to use his dorsal flexors, the ones that oppose the plantar flexors. It's still gonna get into that abductor hallucis like we charged before and activate his glute all at the same time. Good job, Ryan. So we're gonna try to shoot for, again, about 2 sets of 20 repetitions. Remember, the time under tension that we're shooting for is about 2 minutes. We select that intentionally because we want to target your muscles that help to hold the positioning of these joints, and again, the axis of rotation of the levers. If we do it in the right way, it helps to set up your joints so that they properly function, so there's not enough or not too much wear and tear going on in the joint center, and we don't recruit muscles or other connective tissues that are gonna, again, put them into a disease state and eventually lead to strain or trauma or injury. So remember, go for about 2 sets of 20 repetitions with a minute of time in between on both sides. If you fatigue beforehand, you start to see distortion, toes roll out, again, your knee starts to buckle, you start to feel too much pressure on the outer lateral hamstring, or again, you start to see an asymmetry in your hip, all of which are compensations. Stop. We wanted to get to fatigue at the glute, not in these other mechanisms. That's gonna set up other injury cycles down the road, so don't do that. Okay, so again, 2 sets of 20 repetitions. If you can get through again half of it, do half, give yourself a little break, and then get through the rest, and then that would bring us to the end of this cycle. We hope you liked the video today and got a lot of information out of it. Remember, we talked about excess pronation syndrome. This has to do with the inability of the foot to maintain its natural arch. This happens because of inappropriate shoe wear, not being able to actually engage the muscles, not understanding that you need to engage the muscles. Sometimes it has to do with genetic factors, tight calves, or again, congenital issues like really tight Achilles. But either way, just recognize that it's important that we understand the foot has a lot of neurons in it. It feeds a lot of information up to our brain and our central nervous system about how to stabilize our body. And if there are deviations around the foot angle so that you're not able to absorb force from the ground appropriately, it will then have an impact on the knees, hips, spine, and pretty much everything else in the body. So today we hope that you got a lot from it. If you need more information, again, go to the blog, read up on that topic. And again, you can always reach out to us at admin@fluidhealthandfitness.com. We welcome your questions and would love to see you moving better. So on that note, your body's designed to move, so stay in motion. We'll see you next week for another episode.